We are recording. Gentlemen, thank you, for joining me tonight for our first Mr. Lit EDU book club. Black men, black fathers, black mentors. This is what our group is based on. That are discussing literacy. Our first book that we're going to discuss, as everyone knows, and everyone has a copy of it, is "If I Only Would Have Known" by Faith Borkowsky. I know everyone has a copy. We also had questions prior just to help guide us. It wasn't like a homework type of discussion or, assignment. It was just more of a guiding, light to help us get through the discussion tonight. If I get started, myself, and I'll introduce myself last, but if you could just introduce yourself, if you have any children, if you work with kids, and why literacy is just important to you. So Melvin, we'll start with you. I see you on my screen first, brother.
Okay. Again, my name is Melvin Morris. Actually, I have a 5-year-old son. I actually will be starting kindergarten this year, 21-22 academic school year. So really excited about that. Also, I work as a school counselor in the school district of Philadelphia, going into my second year. One thing I have to say with why literacy is so important to me is just the fact of, when you're able to read, you have so much power. Being able to not only for yourself, but also share the knowledge, the knowledge and wisdom with other people, but also the fact of, seeing a child being able to read, and actually put a lot of time and energy into, opening a book, it brings, makes me feel good. So that's pretty much it.
No doubt. Jock, if you want to just tell us who you are.
Jock, I'm a barber in Bridgeport with a 7-year-old. First time in a literacy club. So sorry, I sound a little nervous here, but I guess my importance of it is just having a 7-year-old and having an understanding how kids can be a little intimidated by reading or just intimidated by letters or words. Makes me want to gain a better understanding to how to teach kids, because I'm not a very good, I could teach, not to get too deep, but just I want to get a better understanding on how to just identifying how kids are, where the struggle starts at, and being able to how to coach them into the right direction.
No doubt.
Of reading, because of the importance of it. So,
and just before you go, Kel, let me just say this, Jock, for everybody. This is a no judgment zone. You know what I mean? Throw out what you feel. We need this for the people, for ourselves, so people know we're being honest and just keeping a good conversation. So it's good to say you're nervous. I'm nervous myself. Just having this discussion, because people judge you by, what they hear and what they see. So, I just appreciate you being vulnerable like that. But it's just important to know this is no judgment zone. We're here to talk real talk, to get to the root of a lot of things that are challenging our community. And a lot of it based off of literacy. Kel?
Kellen Massey, no children, work in education, been working in education for about 16 years, I guess. Different avenues from disciplinary schools, GED programs, to accelerated high schools, bunch of nieces and nephews, godchildren. Just seeing the importance of being able to read at a quality level, seeing a bunch of older young people, currently working with young people between the ages of 16 and 21, seeing young people in higher grades credit wise, but skill wise, being on lower reading levels, and just seeing the impact on how the mingling of students in classrooms that are on different levels, how difficult that can be for the students, the educator. So just really knowing the importance of the proper way to read, and Trey introduced this this new thing, and talking to me about how students are being educated the wrong way. So that was right up my lane and something I've been very interested in. So I was definitely willing to tap in and help any way that I could.
No doubt. And just myself, I'm Trey Hadrick. I'm also an educator. I have a 9-year-old son. who's going in the fourth grade. You know, he had his issues with reading. Why it's important to me, because I am an educator, but because of my own personal story with my son, he struggled. And as an educator, you never think that you would fall in those shoes. Like, you know, you trust the education, trust yourself. You think you could pull it out and find the issues, and no, it wasn't happening. So he had to get extra help. You know, and I realized his success. It told me that other children should have the same success. You know, when I saw it happen with him. But we had to be knowledgeable of what to look for, right? And that's the key, because this is what this book that we're going to talk about, to me, is what it teaches you, right? What to look for when your children struggle with reading, you know, and how it's important, even if you're not a strong reader, you know. So, you know, I just wanted to, as I always say, thank you all for joining us tonight. The first thing, you know, just just to dive in, I know we had some questions to look at. And the first little question says, why does Dr. Graff say literacy begins at birth? And why do y'all think literacy is like so important, and why does it begin at birth? Like, what did y'all get from that part that you read?
Man, from my perspective and knowing from what I know now, I think you should be reading to your kids in the womb. It's just like and it fell upon me just to see our kids come out of the womb knowing how to work a phone, and that's because we are constantly on phones, and they get that same reception. So I truly believe if you are reading to kids at the moment they're in the womb, they will be. I think it would be very successful. But yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. What about anybody else? What do y'all think about, you know, why Dr. Graff says literacy begins at birth?
You know, reading a question and going over it, just the fact of actually understanding, you know, sometimes you can read a question the first time and then you go back over and actually realize like, wow, um, understanding that, you know, just the fact that parents talking to their child, like Jock said, you know, reading to your child while they're in the womb, so your child actually can recognize your voice, you know, listening to sounds, even when, you know, music. And I never understood, you know, why, you know, some people play music, but it's just to understand so your child is actually able to, you know, realize your child can actually hear what's going on, but to recognize the voice, you know, when your mom is talking to the baby or when the dad is singing to the baby, you know, just so the child can recognize who's listening, who is talking to them, but also reading to them. Because then when they come outside the womb, you know, they know who's talking to them, you know, so they recognize that voice. So, you know, again, it's very important.
Kel, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts on
the learning to read from birth thing, like Melvin just said, you know, reading the question multiple times made me think about it differently multiple times. But it 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 appears to be so important because a lot of times we take for granted, you know, even when kids are very young, you know, even when they can't read, we're trying to give them directions and tell them what to do and things like that, but they might not really understand the words that we're using.
it?
They don't understand the language, and we just take for granted, you know, we're telling them what to do and you should do what I'm telling you to do, but maybe they don't understand just because they're not familiar with the words. So you know, I think reading, you know, to young people early could really help, you know, just with the language part, because they could better understand, you know, things. Even if they can't read the words, they'd have a better understanding of what may actually be being said to them.
Yep, yep, yep. And that's important because, you know, we stress the importance of, you know, like you said, Jock, being on the cell phones. If they can work these cell phones at 1 year old and 2 years old, damn well they could be taught how to read properly, you know, and we just have to be honest about that. And I think it's important, um, you know, as Kel said, like to stress, you know, that we need to read now so they can hear your voice, right? Because the oral is the first way they listen to things. You know what I mean? That's everything. And then that oral becomes that there's words, and those words get on the paper and it goes to the sounds, and everything else we'll discuss. But if you don't start it at birth and in the womb, as you said, like it's not gonna happen. It's not
Yeah,
gonna happen.
we don't know the significance of knowing that with where training starts at. Um, like we think training starts afterwards, you know, once the child is conceived and here, but it's probably even before that, I think. You know, I used to see mothers put like earphones on their stomachs and then reading the book, and they started talking about understanding rhyming.
Mhm.
I think all that corresponds with each other now. You know, when, like I said, this book opened up some things to me that I really didn't see beforehand or had understanding to, because of the basics, how I was taught or not taught, you know, growing up. That's why I can see why my son struggles, you know what I mean? And where I got to go out and get the extra help for my son. But I don't want to draw it out. But go ahead.
No. That's the truth. And if you think about what you just said, if you don't know about it, how do you fight for your child in the school setting, right? At the end of the day, public school is a taxpayer funded, education, right? And there's nothing you can do. You have to pay for this, whether you have children or not, right? Kel don't have kids yet, but he's still paying for these kids to be taught, right? So he should say, at least these kids should be taught, because I'm paying for y'all to teach these kids well so they can serve my community better when they become adults. The bare minimum, right? I'm paying for them. So when you learn that, when you learn all those things, it's like, wow, like what has happened all these years? Why haven't people taught these children the right way? Then that goes into the other question about like literacy health. It says like, what are ways, that.
But Trey, not to cut you off, before you even get to the next question, and just even talking about this piece, this is why it stuck out to me, because I've dealt with young people 18 years old that literally can't read. I'm talking about passed on through high school, multiple grades, and when it comes down to it, legitimately cannot read.
Mhm.
And even at that point, they don't have an IEP, they're not special ed, they just can't read, but somebody passed them on along the way. But it's hard for them to get to the next level because they can't read. But I don't know how they would make it through all these years of schooling and not be able to read.
Oh man, let's go ahead.
Go ahead.
We might not ever get off this first question if you put me.
Go ahead. We good. Go ahead.
But in the same token, I can see where we can lack at, because like I said, we don't understand the importance. So we might be putting our kids in a school straight from because we got to go to work. So we putting our kids in child care that is not teaching our kids properly how to read. Yeah, they're taking our money, but we're not understanding the teaching that they're getting. So then they move on to kindergarten and first grade. Of course, they're going to struggle, because for these certain amount of years, they were just being babysat. Like, people were just watching them. They're not being taught nothing. And like my son went through that, he went to recess and did all that and had fun. And then when he actually hit the grade, it was like, oh, he was struggling. So I didn't know where it was lacking at. So I'm you get frustrated as a parent not understanding this thing. And like I said, reading this book gives you a better understanding. So like I said, it starts that early, and parents not knowing, or parents not being able to put their kids in a school that is teaching the right stuff. You got to understand, teaching starts so young that when we start trying to put the teaching in, it's going to be hard, because they got hard spots, because they haven't been developed. So you're going to be hitting a wall. So go ahead. My bad.
No. And everything you said is true. Like, people have to hear that, right? And, at the end of the day, there's no parent, and I'm going to say this from my standpoint as an educator, but I don't believe there's a parent on the face of this earth, no matter their education attainment, right? High school diploma, associates, tech school, HVAC, batch, whatever they have attained, right? And the society's way to look in education, right? That says, when you go to school, I don't care what you learn, right? To their child. There's no parent, there's no parent who doesn't want their child to be able to come out of that school setting being able to read, right? Regardless if they can read or not. They're just hoping and actually putting faith in these settings. Like you said, even in the early childhood, in the preschool, I'm putting faith in you, because that's not my profession or specialty. And I'm saying, hey, can you make sure my child can learn the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s? They can read X, Y, Z?
I don't even know if we asked that question. Even walking in there, I don't even know, because we're just looking for them to have a place to go, because we don't want the responsibility of teaching us. It all fall back on us, dog. We got to start taking the responsibility and taking it from the start, and not waiting till later. and we're going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
Our kids are going to get frustrated. Yeah. And then eventually, go ahead. My bad. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, and then that's another part. I don't have children yet. So how often do parents go into a child care facility and are looking for someone to teach that? Or are they really just looking for somebody to keep their kids safe, allow them to have a good time, make sure they eat, or are they really looking for them to learn things when they go to these child care facilities?
So I think it's twofold, right? Depending on the community, right? And like we say, people in the hood or in our communities, right? A lot of it is safety, often, right? But we don't understand that the ultimate safety is the literacy, right?
Yeah, but we don't have the quality of teachers in our hoods either. So
or are they being taught? Maybe they're not being taught that either. But you could be right. I don't know. I can't say, everybody has that quality of and I would say expertise, right? Because I can't say the individual. I believe the individual, they get in the profession, they're doing the best they can at that moment, right? They had to be taught, right? Like jockey or barber, somebody can't really give a fade. They need to get more experience and more tutoring to be able to give it the right way. But that quality, if you're giving a bad cut, no matter what, you're giving a bad cut. So if your teaching skills aren't up to where it needs to be to help children, they're not giving the results that these parents deserve for paying for that daycare,
I see that, man, because I seen, firsthand going through these daycares. They need bodies. You know what I mean? Like they need the paycheck, they need the bodies. Mm-hmm. So when they're hiring, they're not asking them on the basics. And I'm not saying all of them, but I know if you're paying for the good quality ones, they have the people in place to make sure these developments happen for these kids. And that's why you go to school and some of these kids are reading in like a second grade level in the first grade. Like I used to hear my son's classmates reading compared to my son. And I was like, hold up, something ain't right here. I got to, you know what I mean? This is my fault. I wasn't blaming the school system. Now I got to go out and get the extra help. I know everybody can't afford it, but we got to start very young, we have people in our communities that can teach these kids how to read. We're really not going out doing the work that we need to do as parents. And like I said, I can't blame the system anymore. All these systems been failing us as a community as a whole. It doesn't even matter about race. It's they you know what I mean, to a certain standpoint. So at the end of the day, we have to go out to people and reach out. I know plenty of women or mothers that want to teach these kids how to read. We got to go out and ask for help. We can't be too prideful.
So just to keep us going, because that's everything you said 100%, which I don't want to fall off too far from the book.
I know, I'm sorry.
No. Too far, man. These discussions have to they can't just be all book. You understand what I'm saying? That's not what it's about. The book is just it's the appetizer, you know what I mean, to get us going. And then whatever comes out of it, we just need to talk about. So the next question, it says, like, what are some of the red flags that he talked about in the book, that show that children might have, reading difficulties? And from what you learned from your reading, what did you realize? Like, myself, I realized like a late talker, like my son, I was worried when he went to preschool, his speech wasn't there. It was like really like blabbly. And I was scared, and it's ironic because now if I would have known that back then, I probably would have realized he was going to have a reading issue. I didn't know that was a sign of having a reading issue if he can't talk well, which goes back to what you said in the very first question about reading in the womb, so that we're teaching language immediately so it's easy to pick up as you're going forward. So what were some other red flags that y'all noticed when we were reading it and when they talked about regarding children?
I noticed that when the doctor was asking the little guy to point out to recognize the colors, he wasn't able to actually say the color blue, even though Dr. Graff was pointing to color blue, but also the words that he was using. And the mother actually thought that what he was saying was okay. And it goes back to the history within the family of her mom said, well, maybe she was just at a low level, that's expected. Whereas, a lot of times it's sad, but, our family history plays a big part into, how our kids are, learning in school. If sometimes, our parents may not have the time, just like as Jock said, mentioned earlier, parents have to work. So if we're not, putting the time and the energy, into our child, so because we have to work, then our kids are going to lag behind. So, that's something I, did notice, in the book that was mentioned.
The same, the mispronouncing the words and the the getting small things wrong early. I think a lot of parents, they don't know those are red flags. They just think, oh, they might not be paying attention or they're not focused. They're just saying anything to get it done with. But no, maybe they're really confused. Maybe they don't know exactly what they're doing. I'm seeing a lot of younger kids they're going off memory, not really understanding. You know, and
Yep.
and a lot of times parents just don't know what to look for. They just assume because they're so young it's no big deal, and they just let it go and just figure, all right, they'll figure it out at some point, and don't really stress the importance of it.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what Jock said, about like us taking it into our own hands, right? Because we notice that the system itself haven't given us always a quality product, right? So because of that, once we learn these things, that's why this book is so important. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the book is written in probably like a third grade. I don't know, like but it's deep, because it makes you think, but it's written like in the third grade level that anybody for the most part should be able to read.
My son should be reading this book.
No question. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that, and it's that simple. He should be able to read that book. So
Yep.
It was, like I said, it was very enlightening.
Very. Yep. So just to keep it moving, why do you think speech and language impact reading? I think we talked about that, so I don't know how much we have to dig deep into it, but saying right.
I mean, if you're using the wrong words, you don't have the understanding or comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Like so it goes hand in hand. Like if it just goes hand in hand, and
it's deep. Yeah, it's deep.
So everything is comprehension at the end of the day. You can read a sentence, or someone can give you instructions, and you don't completely know what they're talking about because you don't know the word, or you assume something different because you thought the word meant something different.
Mm-hmm.
So it all goes hand in hand.
Yep. Anybody else? Any other thoughts about that? Why do you think speech and language impact reading?
Yeah, I agree with Jock. Like, it's that simple. If you don't understand the words, sometimes you don't understand what people are saying, and then the context is wrong, and then it's all off. And you see it so much, even with social media. You see somebody can post a sentence, and people don't understand what they're reading and take it a completely different way.
Yep.
And we're talking about adults on a daily basis. And then,
Man, I do it all the time.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But with it just shows, it shows how detrimental it can be as well, because it's not always a social media situation where, the mistake can, be no big deal. Sometimes it could cost someone a job because they read an email wrong and don't understand what's going on, or just following instructions, different things. The comprehension piece plays into it after the not understanding of the language.
And then at a certain point, your memory, I'm gonna say it's gonna fail you, but it won't hold up. That's why you have to be able to read through stuff and be able to comprehend it, because the memory is just going to be like, I've never seen this, right? So if you haven't seen a certain word, and maybe you spoke, in a conversation, but if you haven't read it and it's time to read something, or, and it's not even about getting like a master's degree, or I'm just talking about a basic, just survival, right? There's a lot of times there's some words we use in a conversation that some people have never even read it, on a piece of paper. And they're just like, I don't even know what this is. And then you get up. I mean, I've had children, I've done small little literacy things with some students, and kids are like, I don't know this word. Then I tell them the word, they're like, how did I know that? Like pterodactyl, right? Like kids can say it and know what it is, know, historical aspect of what they say, in the science world and in history, but they can't read it on a piece of paper because they haven't seen that word and haven't been taught how to read through these words. And it's scary, man. So, we got to do better, man. How would you, going into this is what a heavy question for me, even though it's quick, but dyslexia, I know in our community, a lot of times it's called illiteracy, right? These kids can't read, but sometimes in affluent and predominantly white communities, it's called dyslexia, and they're fighting for dyslexia, right? And they said one of the worst individuals that society has produced is a black male who is dyslexic, right? And we're not talking about it enough. We're not talking about it enough. And how would y'all describe dyslexia? From what you read about the book and the effects of it on children and just adults as well.
For me, I would say it's dangerous. Because I think that's one of those things. If a young person is, dealing with it, pride and fear might keep them from speaking up and saying something. So a child could go years, without actually letting an adult know, hey, I'm having this type of trouble. Can you help me figure it out? And then who knows what age they are by the time somebody figures it out, and they're so far behind the 8 ball, it just makes everything so much more difficult for them.
No doubt. Melvin, Jock, any thoughts about dyslexia?
Man, it may be adults out here that have it and don't even know they have it.
100%.
So in the same struggle as an adult, you can avoid reading, a little bit more than a kid. So yeah, I'm sure it hurts people in that aspect. I really don't know. I never came in full contact with that, or maybe I haven't. Don't even know I have it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think you said, not to cut you off, but to say that as adults, and I'm gonna say, just talk our community, just being honest, right? In the Black community, right? There's adults in the Black community who probably have it and don't know, right? And then they also, like you said, have, even if they don't have it, but don't even know they come in contact. We've never been able to talk to fight to get the services, right? Because a lot of children are labeled, right? Maybe in school they can't read and their behaviors go a certain way.
Oh, you already, man, listen. When your kid is acting up in school, it's because they're struggling. Other than that, it's not because it's because they're struggling. They have no other outlet. They feel behind. My son is a good kid at home all around the board. But when he used to go to school, he used to lash out a little bit, and I had to line, just getting back in line. But I started understanding why. It's because for one, you're intimidated by everyone else who knows something that you don't.
Yes, you don't know. Powerful.
You know what I mean? And that hurts your feelings. It makes you feel less than something. And, and you're trying. So especially when you're trying and you can't get it, and then they're moving on. I seen the frustration of my boy, man, it hurt my heart. You know what I mean? So, and that's what got me here today. That's what makes me want to do this. So in the same token, I'm doing whatever I possibly can, tutorings, whatever it's going to take. And I don't care how long it's going to take, because it took a long time that I even realized that he had a deficiency there. So, yeah. Go ahead. I hope I answered the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all in line.
And I just want to say salute to Jock for even paying attention to that and jumping on it, because I had a young man, 18, and this is when I was working in the classroom. This is at a disciplinary school. So at this point, he's already acted up to the point where he's been put out of the traditional school system. They sent him to a disciplinary school. And I noticed anytime it was time to do some work, he would act a fool. In between, he'd be chilling. It's a disciplinary school, but he'd be chilling. But it wasn't until it was time to do some work that he would start tripping. And the one day I really pulled him to the side and I was like, yo, what's up? Because we had that rapport, he literally just put his head down and said, yo, Mr. Max, I can't read. And I'm just like, man. And, this is kind of what I spoke of before, working with young people. At this, mind you, he's 18. He's in like maybe 11th grade. Doesn't have a IEP, so he's not identified as having a learning issue. At this point, he's so far along, and the school he's in, they don't want to test him to get him an IEP because he's so behind in services. Luckily, there was a couple, super thorough, special ed teachers in the building that were willing to work with him on the side, but, life circumstances, came into play in between, and, we weren't really able to help him. He ended up going to jail for some other stuff. But yeah, just
And that's a failing system. It's
Exactly.
everyone around him failed him since
Yep.
he was a kid. And you can't just blame the school.
No.
Like I don't think you can blame schools. You can't blame just the schools, man.
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I was gonna say even with his, but this is where even still the school, somebody has to
pick it up.
Somebody has
somebody.
to.
Yeah.
Somebody has to pick it up.
His home situation was terrible. So he wasn't going to get it at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I don't know how, but this is where the teachers just not wanting to deal with the behavior, say, you know what, I'm just going to pass you on and I'm gonna let the 6th grade teacher deal with you. Now the 6th grade teacher is like, oh, I'm gonna let the 7th grade teacher deal with you. I don't want to deal with you.
We got to remember they put a law in that was no child left behind law. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's all by design. Yes, we know it. And it's going to affect the parents that can't put the work in, that don't want to put the responsibility in. Go play. Go ahead. Yeah. So we gotta understand that though. We gotta look through these things. You know what I mean? So if we know kids are lashing out, it could be at home issues, but in the token, it may be because they are intimidated on where they at, and the only way they can get that attention is by acting like a clown or whatever the case may be.
So before we almost about to wrap this up for the first one, and I ask the people out there listening tonight just to be patient with us as we learn in this whole book club and this, these sessions, man, just coming together. Like I said, this is major. But this first chapter of the book, if I only would have known, was talking about the pediatrician, just so everybody knows why we mentioned the doctor, why we talked about the womb, talking about the pediatrician. And, just a question, do you think pediatricians should be taught literacy when they're in their medical school? And I'm not saying like be like a teacher, but like just to learn those foundational issues, to tell the parent, because I know, just being honest and not trying to put any fault on anybody, as Jock says, because we have to still learn ourselves. But I never remember my child's pediatrician saying, when he was struggling with his words at that time, saying like he might be a struggling reader, and health-wise, he was always on chart and all those things. But just imagine, I mean, his health can be good, but if you ain't got this, as we know, it's done. So what do y'all think?
Just to answer that real quick, I'm sorry to jump in there, but just to answer that really quick, I think the red signs, the red flags, that's one thing parents need to know. It may be not your pediatrician saying like, oh, I see something, but just educating you on signs, or you searching for those signs and seeing that, because these signs help me out a lot. Just having that little bit of knowledge, now it all gave me reflection on when I hear other kids talk, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's already a sign in the beginning of they may have a problem or an issue with the way they talk or something like that. So it was really, I think the red signs, the red flags are key. As far as a pediatrician, they may not have to take the class or nothing, but just informing the parent on that if they don't know.
I agree. I agree 100% with Jock said, because, if parents are not aware, they just don't know, and the child is just going to be passed on. Like Kel said, the student is just going to be passed on to the next grade, and then to the next grade, and the teacher is going to think, okay, well, 3rd grade teacher is going to deal with it and fix the problem. When the 3rd grade teacher is not saying capable, but if they're not willing to deal with the disruptive behavior, but also being frustrated in the classroom, but also teaching the student, then it's going to be passed on to the next grade. So again, if parents are aware early on, like Jock said, they know the red flags to look out for, then we know, okay, now it's time for us to get some support so we can take care of this situation early on. So we won't have to worry about our child being disruptive in class or acting out, or being, left behind.
No doubt. And also, just to throw something out there, even when a child doesn't act out, a parent needs to listen to their child read, right? It's important, when your child is very young, to ask your child to read aloud, right? We'll tell them, hey, go read that book. And the kid comes back and tells you something about a story. And the reality is you might not know everything about that story that they're reading, but you're telling them to sit in the corner and read for 15 minutes, thinking that's helping them, right? And they're not even being able to read. And this kid's a good kid, no behavior. So that's one tip that we have to make sure we're telling people. Make your child sit down, read this book to you, the kindergarten, first, fourth grade, 4-year-old, very basic level, so that you can hear for yourself to know, like, man, my son and my daughter can't read. I got to do something about this. I need to talk to the pediatrician. I need to talk to the preschool teacher, see what they're doing there. Are they teaching decodable skills? And we'll talk more about that, the sounds of the alphabet, as we go on. But I just want to say thank y'all for this first go round, man.
Before we end, this is why I want to, just what you said, that's why I think pediatricians do need to have some baseline knowledge, because even if the parent doesn't know, if sometimes from what I see, when children are younger, the only person parents listen to is the pediatrician. That's the one place they're always getting those appointments. They're always seeing the pediatrician. So even if they're able to interject that, like, hey, how is this going? You know what I mean? They may be the person to introduce that to the parent that doesn't know. Yep. Like even younger people that aren't responsible, if they're a parent, they making sure the kid is still getting those early pediatrician visits.
No question. Parenting slides off as a child gets older, but that early years, whether we can consider them, whatever it is considered a good parent, right? Because that's judgment, but
that's where it starts at, though.
No, what I'm saying though, but even during that time, as Kel said, and that's why you're so involved, Jock, because we're super involved at that young age. Like, we're not talking about, none of us have children that are over 10, 13 years old, right? We're all 10 or younger, right? Or 9 or younger. And Kel still doesn't have a child yet, right? So when you think of that, we're talking about, because we're involved right now. And like he said, we got to get them right now, as you said, Jock. So we're involved and know the red flags. Come at the pediatrician. Make sure the pediatrician is telling you these things, because if not, you're going to say he's healthy, she's healthy, start school, and then boom, crash, and no one's told you nothing. And that's 4 or 5 years of so much time that things could have been made a difference. So
and then you got a teacher in class teaching almost close to 30 students, and you be talking about, are you teaching decodable? Listen, they got 2. You're frustrated with one.
Yes, sir.
Kid. How about one teacher teaching 27 kids in a classroom? Come on now.
Yeah, man.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, man. So,
it doesn't work.
I appreciate this, man. I'm sitting here thinking as we talking, man. This, even I got my water, but Nori does the drink champs. This might be the lit champs. You know what I mean?
I like that.
I got my water, so we might call this the lit champs, man. But it's important, man. This is so important, man. And we're going to continue these talks. We have 2 more for this book, and then we'll go from there. Add some other people in here, some other perspectives, man. But I appreciate y'all. We'll reconvene and get back together in a week, and we'll continue these discussions. Thank y'all.
Sound good.
Appreciate it.